This might be him.
Look at this beauty. Anytime a man shows up wearing this hat, he's got stories to tell. Mangrove snapper. Pretty little fish. Best friend, the sheephead.
Well, that's a pretty fish.
All right, everyone. So you guys saw us. We just got back from fishing with Captain Olden, and we managed to catch a couple of bull reds. Most of the folks that catch the bull reds, well, they just release them, but we do utilize them. And I wanted to show you one of the ways that we utilize them. So what I've done is I've taken the thicker ends of the fillets from the bull reds. I've got a pot that's about half full of water. The only seasoning I'm going to put in this pot is crushed red pepper and just salt. So we just season the water. As I said, it's about half full. You don't need a tremendous amount of salt. You don't need a tremendous amount of pepper. So we're going to get this water to a boil. Once it's to a boil, we'll add these redfish fillets, and we're going to boil those fillets for just a very short period of time, maybe 5 to 6 minutes. At that point, we'll take them out, we'll flake them up, and I'll show you what the next step is. All right, so we've got our water to a hard boil. We're going to just throw our chunks of bull red in here. As I said, we're going to let this boil for about 6 minutes. Once it comes back to a boil, I'm also going to throw in some mushrooms. We'll show you this entire dish once it's done. So we're going to let this come back to a boil. Then it'll boil for about 6 minutes. So it'll come back to a boil and then boil for 6 minutes. Then we'll take it out, we'll shred it, we'll separate the fish from the mushrooms. All right, let's let this do its thing. All right, everybody, so for this recipe today, you're going to need a few ribeyes, just comparable to however many people you're going to be feeding. The crushed red pepper and the regular salt that you saw us put in with the redfish and the mushrooms. Then fresh ground pepper, fresh ground salt, a little bit of Old Bay, some heavy cream, stick of butter. I've got about 1.5 pounds of 16, 20 count shrimp, 2 cups of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and I'm also going to add about 1 cup of mozzarella cheese and half a stick of cream cheese. We're going to make a sauce. We'll pour it over the steaks with the shrimp on top and the mushrooms on top. So that's everything you're going to need for this dish. The fish is almost done. We're going to start getting everything else going. All right, so the redfish fillets are done. So we're just going to take everything out. I've got the mushrooms in here also, so I'm going to scoop them off the top. Once we get the redfish fillets out and we get them to cool down some, I'll shred it up, and then we're going to use it to put in this sauce that we'll put over the steaks. So you see all the mushrooms coming out. Now we just grab some of these redfish fillets. We're going to set them out and, like I said, let them cool just so you can handle them. You could shred it up now if you wanted, but it would be much easier for you once it cools off. All right, so the redfish fillets have cooled down considerably, so we just kind of cut them into chunks. We don't, you know, it's not anything precise because this is going to flake up once we start putting it in this sauce over here in a moment. So once it's all kind of in usable size pieces, we'll get this sauce started, okay? Not much to it. very simple. I like to keep most of my dishes pretty simple for everybody to follow. So also the mushrooms that we had, we're going to put those in the sauce as well. So I'm gonna just get all this red fish, put it in the bowl with the mushrooms. Now this does have, the mushrooms in particular, has quite a bit of salt that it picks up from the original salt and seasoning that we put in there. So remember that your mushrooms will carry a lot of salt over to your sauce. Okay, so back to the same pot that we used for the red fish. We've got a quarter of a stick of butter. So I'm gonna melt this down, and we're just gonna add a tablespoon of flour. Gonna make a slight roux, and it's gonna be a very light roux. We're not gonna get this roux dark. We're not after this roux for a lot of flavor that a dark roux would bring to you. We're strictly after this roux as a thickening agent. Okay, so we've got the butter melted. We're gonna add 1 tablespoon of flour. Like I said, this is strictly being added as a thickening agent. We are not looking for a lot of flavor out of this. We just want this to be something to thicken this sauce up a little bit, okay? So quickly, we'll add our cream to it. Now we're probably gonna add a little water to it. That's yet to be determined, but so that's all I want. That's all I want from my roux right there. I do not want to cook this roux. I'm not looking for any color in it. This is all I wanted from it. Now, this entire thing of heavy whipping cream will go straight into this roux. Okay, so we've added the whipping cream to the roux. Now we're going to add the red fish fillets that we've chopped up along with the mushrooms. Kind of let these flavors marry together a little bit, just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll add the cheeses that I described earlier. All right, so we've got our sauce that's getting started in this cast iron pan, which I've got a very large cast iron pan here. I'm gonna melt a half a stick of butter. That's gonna be just to start with. We will add more than that as we go, but this is how we're gonna cook our steaks. Okay, so the butter is melted, the pan is nice and hot, the butter is getting a little bit of brown to it. So these steaks were just, coated with the fresh cracked black pepper and the fresh cracked salt. Put them in the pan. And then leave them alone. Let these cook for about, 6 minutes maybe. A steak will be done on one side when it does not stick to the cast iron. If it's still sticking to your cast iron, it's not done. Let it sear, let it get where it's free from the cast iron, and then flip it. Okay, so our sauce is cooking pretty well. Lowered the heat on it now considerably. We're going to add the Parmesan, which is 2 cups of Parmesan, fresh grated Parmesan, fresh grated mozzarella, 1 cup, half a thing of Philadelphia cream cheese, and 3/4 of a stick of margarine. It's actually butter. So we're going to let all this just kind of marry together a little bit. We're going to let it cook down. It'll thicken up from the cheese, obviously. And then we'll add a little seasoning to it. Not much salt, obviously, because like I said, the mushrooms carried a lot of salt with them. So we're gonna add a little bit of heat to it. Okay, so just looking at our steaks, it appears they're about done on the first side. So we're going to flip them. And repeat the process. Since the pan is hotter now than it was when we started, it's going to sear the other side of the steak much quicker. So we're probably only going to leave them on there for about 3 minutes. Then we'll take them off, put them on a cutting board, and let them sit there to rest. All right, so looking at the steaks, they're done. We're going to just set them on this cutting board, and we're going to let them rest for about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not going to cover them. I'm not interested in maintaining the heat. They're going to be fine just as they are. They're cooked enough as they are, so I don't need to put an aluminum foil tint over it or anything of that nature. So they're going to sit there for about 10 minutes. We've got one last trick up our sleeve. We're going to do some shrimp to put on the top there. So, same pan that we had the steaks in, just has the butter in it. Add some shrimp. Add some Old Bay. I would love to say that we're going to use the Martha's Tomato seasoning on this, but truthfully, at this point, nothing beats Old Bay. We're about winding it down. Just come and slice your ribeyes. Everybody kind of has an idea how to do that. Then we're going to stack them in this tray. Alright, now you can stop. Once you have your steak all cut up and laid in your platter, just get your shrimp, kind of drizzle them over it. People will grab what they want, obviously. Bring your sauce over. Get yourself a ladle. You want to get some of this sauce, but you want to also get the mushrooms and the flakes of the bull red that we call it. So, there you go. Ribeyes with a bull red and cream sauce.